indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just have a few things here. First of all, I want to say happy retirement to somebody, Ed Lagasse, who worked for many years for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and did countless programs in this community and educated many, many people about what the Fish and Wildlife does and the river, and just want to wish him all the best. And also, at the end of this meeting, we will adjourn and then go into closed session to do the performance review for our city manager. And then just want to say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and safe travels to everybody this year. So that's it. City manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to thank Lee Steak Shop and other folks who helped make the holiday event market last weekend get pulled off. Last year, we didn't need jackets. It was about 50 degrees, and this year, people were pretty chilly. So maybe next year, Lee, you can get it in the middle there somewhere. We'll put you in charge of the weather. I want to invite the council to the staff holiday party here on Wednesday at noon. We usually have more than enough food, so just bring an appetite. I want to congratulate Christine Booth from Finance, who got her CPA awarded today. So very exciting to have, I think there's 2 CPAs now, yeah, down in the Finance Department. So they'll be looking over your shoulder next, Mary. So, and then I want to turn over to Chris Hood real quick to discuss an upcoming issue that the council will be looking at first of the year.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have had a request related to the Cobblestone Creek subdivision. There's the phase 2 of the subdivision that is currently undeveloped, and it's subject to a 2008 development agreement. In that 2008 development agreement, there's a right of first refusal. It's not very specific, but basically it says that the city has a right of first refusal on the bluff land within the entirety of the Cobblestone Creek subdivision. There is a buyer, as I said, currently for phase 2 of that property, and they are seeking to have the council waive or release that right of first refusal so that then they can close on that particular piece of property. So that'll be something that is going to come back to you for consideration on January 6th, and the question at that time will be whether or not you want to exercise the right of first refusal or release it.
And staff will certainly provide recommendation and background for that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
That's it. Okay, roll call.
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councilman Thurley.
Here.
Moeller. Here. Alexander. Here. Iden. Here. Borzakowski.
Here.
Scholmeyer.
Here.
Under the required public hearings, the first item is the 2020 property tax levy and proposed budget.
Public hearing, so I'll declare it open and ask if there's anybody that wishes to speak. Anybody wish to speak? One more opportunity. Anybody wish to speak? Hearing none, I'll close the public meeting, and
we
no
move on.
action is required. So,
Item 2.2 is the Visit Winona 2020 proposed budget.
Make a motion
Oh,
to,
there's public hearing, sorry.
okay. Declare the public hearing open, and I see we do have somebody that wants to speak. So, name and address.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Matthew Fluharty. I live at 960 West King. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. I am the 2019 chair of the board of Visit Winona, and I just wanted to come before y'all just for a couple moments, and I have a very packed agenda, and express our thanks as a board, as a staff, and as an organization for your time and consideration and continued support throughout this entire year. We'd also really like to thank Parks and Recreation, who were such an enormous help during a snow-related facility issue we had at the Visitor Center last winter, that long, intense last winter, and just thank the entire staff there for their really just incredible help and rapid response during a moment where we were unsure what was going to happen. Really just grateful in general for the whole city ecosystem. What I'd like to share just for a moment are just a couple of updates from this year, which has been a really, I think, a year of great progress for Visit Winona. We've had a real expansion of our local collaborations and partnerships throughout the city and region. We've seen some really powerful strategic marketing be enacted and also really widely benefit the city and the region. And we've seen some pretty amazing increased visibility and engagement, which has brought visitors from our direct region, but also from our national region to our community, and has translated to visibility, but also to dollars and to increase sustainability for all of us. What I'd like to share is just a couple notes. I know you all have a far larger document in front of you, and I won't read that in great depth, but just to say that this was a great year for Visit Winona. Our lodging receipts for 2019 are up just under 7% from the same moment last year. So it's been a great year. I know we got together last year and we were sharing some of our advancements on the social media front. That strategy and those investments have really returned value to the organization and hopefully to the community at large. During the same period of 2019, Visit Winona received roughly $7,000 in grants from Explore Minnesota Tourism, as well as disbursing $7,500 in grants to 8 local partners in the Winona region through a competitive application process that gave really crucial marketing funds to a range of entities and organizations. Everywhere folks from the Kashubian Capital Centennial to Sanborn Canoe to Frozen River. So this has really been a year of, I think, great and continued success for us, but also thinking about the ways in which we as an organization can help spread that success in our community. One of the crucial aspects of Visit Winona is marketing. And I remember last year at our presentation, I think we were utilizing the projector and showing y'all some of the ways in which Visit Winona is far outpacing our colleagues regionally, our regional CVBs in the region. And that has really continued in 2019. We've had a really strong social media presence. We've had fun and quirky campaigns. If you all are on Facebook, it's kind of hard to miss them. You know, they are everywhere. And that's been recognized by folks visiting the region, but also by folks in the tourism industry. Really a whole set of awards that are almost too numerous to mention, but include the Excellence in Marketing Award from Explore Minnesota for our Facebook Live streaming, which was a really enormous boon for how folks within Winona, but also far beyond, got to see our community and got to see the various aspects of the community in action. It also led to an innovation award from a different entity. And just to give you all a sense of what that looks like, we got together last year and shared our progress, and at that point, we had roughly 55,000 folks in our network looking at that work, and that was tremendous success. We've more than doubled that amount in a single year. So at this point, our reach is roughly 132,000, almost 133,000, just on Facebook. And of course, we market across other social networks. So we're doing our very best to sort of to spread far and wide the power of what's happening here, and to, whether it's folks who we hope are visiting once or potentially moving here, create that as an opportunity, a space for folks to make a mental note and to hopefully plan a visit or even to plan a life here. Kind of with that, Winona has been in the news a lot through a lot of our work in the last year. Magazines, newspapers, blogs, websites. It's again a very long list, but it ranges from everything from WCCO's Going to the Lake episodes, which came here to Winona, to HGTV, to the Star Tribune, to Midwest Living, and to a number of this whole other subset in the travel industry of blogs and influencer, like Instagram influencer accounts, which are increasingly very important for getting the word out. Visit Winona and Winona have been really broad across all of those platforms, which I think bodes well for all of our collective work together in the future. So if marketing is one piece of Visit Winona, another part is the partnership program. And at this point, Visit Winona counts 158 partners from the area who collaborate with us to promote the area, increase local awareness and engagement, extend community relations, enhance the guest experience for folks who come to hotels or who come to restaurants as visitors, and in general help to promote the economic value of tourism to our region and to our community. And as one just very brief metric within this larger list, roughly 45,000 copies of our visitor's guide are sent out all over the place, within the region but far beyond it, sort of conveying again that message of what's here for folks to check out. And just to say also, the visitor center is open this weekend. If anybody has last-minute gifts that they need to pick up, please stop on by. We have such an amazing display of Winona-created and Winona-focused merchandise, and a lot of it is really fantastic. Just one other element here before I kind of get away from the microphone, to talk about partnership. Also is partnerships connecting Winona meetings, which I think probably a lot of folks in the room have been a part of in one form or another, which is doing that crucial work of, Visit Winona's work is about marketing this region, but also bringing folks together to continue to collaborate and engage and think through how we can further work together to increase the economic impact of all of those efforts. So Connecting Winona happens once a month, and will be happening again in January. So folks, please check that out if you haven't as well. We also give experiential tours to groups from the regions, but also from far beyond, from countries all around the world. So there's a lot happening. There was a lot that did happen in 2019 for Visit Winona. I would just like to close by offering our really deep thanks to our staff and our board at Visit Winona. Our board is filled with rock stars. Now, Winona is full of rock stars. Our board is also filled, our staff is full of them. Kate Carlson received the Rising Star Award from Seven Rivers Alliance just a couple months ago. Mary Farrell just last week received a Winona Fine Arts Commission Award to complete her film about the Masonic Drops. And Cynthia Porter received the Innovation Individual Award at the EMT Awards for that Facebook marketing campaign I spoke about earlier. So just to say that this is just as a board member and as a citizen of Winona, I just want to just express how lucky we are to have such a great, engaged, and creative staff working on our behalf. And so with that, I'd just like to thank Mayor and Council for your time and for the opportunity to share a little bit about Visit Winona, and to thank our board. And I'm happy to answer any questions that there might be.
Well, I'd like to just jump in and say what a great job I think you guys are doing. I miss the daily interaction with the staff. And I can't let Pat just sit there because I do have a question for her, so. Can't just let you come to the meeting, not say
Good
something.
evening, Mayor and staff.
Oops.
Yes.
Pat, I know that next year there's supposed to be 6 steamboat stops, I think, in Winona, which is more than we've seen in many years. But what do you hear from the Viking River cruises? Where's that at? Do you know?
I haven't heard from them in a while. The last time I spoke was to the same contact that Lucy also spoke to. I think she heard lately and told me that they are getting going in 2021, and they have some agreements with some cities in Iowa, but they will not be stopping in Winona, at least for the first 2 years, until they build up their fleet. The gentleman had said that to me a few years ago, that they were starting lower down the river and testing out the first initial boat, and then they would build up and come upwards. So as far as I know, and as far as Lucy knows, we do not have them coming the first year, but they are adding to their fleet, and they would definitely consider us for later on. We do have 7 dockings from the American Queen, the Duchess, and the Countess for 2020.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Anybody else have any questions for CVB? If not, anybody else wish to speak? One more chance. Anybody else wish to speak? All right. Close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. All right, motion by Michelle, second by Al. Any discussion? George?
And I think we just need to, as I mention every year, our hotel developers here in town, how they're willing to put up a strong investment to get these hotels going, which in turn is revenue for the Visit Winona Bureau. So a special thanks to those people as well, too.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 2.3 is the annual public hearing for the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan.
All right, public hearing, declare it open. Ask if there's anybody here. I guess John wants to kick it off, so.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think it'd be helpful for me to give a start with just a brief overview of our stormwater pollution prevention plan. The city, as an operator of a municipal separate storm sewer system, is required to put together a stormwater pollution prevention plan. A lot of words there, but it's a plan, and this public meeting is a required aspect of it. And this meeting is an opportunity to have questions answered and for folks to learn about our storm sewer system. And ultimately, the reason there are stormwater permits and the reason we have a plan is to maintain clean water. Whatever goes down the storm sewer ends up in our lake or our river eventually, so we want the water to be as clean as possible, and that's why we have the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has their rules. The SWIP, as it's known, is a required piece of being a storm sewer operator. And there are 6 main components that I'm going to run through briefly. The first is that we need to do education and outreach to our constituents. We do so on a kind of regular basis or a continual basis through our website, and then we have an annual meeting. We also provide a checklist for construction contractors so they know what our rules and policies are, and that's also on our website. A related item is an opportunity for public participation and involvement. This annual meeting is one way of doing so. And we also have a community hotline on our website for folks to call with questions or concerns. If they see something going on in the neighborhood or something going down the storm sewer that shouldn't, we get a call or an email. The third required piece is to have an illicit discharge detection and elimination program. An illicit discharge is basically anything that goes down the storm sewer other than stormwater. So that could be chemicals, that could be rocks. This year we had a bunch of styrofoam beads end up in our storm sewer. So this is an item actually where it's very important that the community contacts us if they see something. That's how we hear about many of these cases. And certainly we are keeping an eye out as we're going out and doing field work. But it's something that we do periodically as well to see if there's things going down our storm sewer that shouldn't be. Probably the biggest focus for us is construction site stormwater runoff control. So that is working with construction contractors to know what's required under city code, and that's chapter 68, and to do regular inspections during the construction season. And this past year we worked with our inspections department to do a specific education piece as part of their annual building meeting, and that seemed to be a pretty good way to reach a wide variety of people, so we're going to hopefully continue that. The fifth item is post-construction management, and that is essentially making sure that the stormwater features that are required or that are installed are working. For us, probably the biggest item is that once a building is done, the landscaping isn't necessarily put in, and so that's probably where we have most of our problems of landscaping and sod, et cetera, not being in place. The final aspect is internal to city operations, and that is inspecting our city infrastructure. That's checking our outlets that go to the lake or the river, checking our stormwater ponds for their capacity, that they're functioning, as well as looking at city stockpiles of materials at our facilities. And I want to take a minute to talk about how anyone who lives in the city anywhere can help contribute to better stormwater quality. A big piece is reporting issues, and if you see something that's going down the storm drain that shouldn't be, to contact the city. Myself, a lot of the times, as actually the police or the fire department gets the first call. Another item is to adopt your storm drain to try to keep it clean from debris and leaves or other materials that might go down it. The city does regular routine street sweeping, but there is certainly time between when we're sweeping, and especially in the fall, when there's items that are washing into the storm sewer that are adding nutrients and pollution to our lake. And the third item that's probably very specific to a household or to an individual is to limit use of fertilizer and pesticides. Those can wash off into our bodies of water as well as seep into the groundwater. So that's something that can contaminate water. And I should note that This is the last year of our current MS4 storm sewer permit. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency updates it every 5 or 6 years, and the new permit is going to be in effect in 2020. And as part of the new permit, there is going to be increased focus on public engagement and education, as well as pet waste and chloride use, which has been something the city has looked at, but has not been a formal part of our stormwater pollution prevention plan. The city will also be taking some steps with the Lake Winona total maximum daily load because there is excess phosphorus in in the lake watershed. And there will be some rules as part of that, part of the new program as to what we need to do for reducing the storm sewer contribution to the phosphorus problem. And with that, I just want to leave my information, open up to questions and comments and concerns.
John, how much of a problem are leaves?
Leaves, I mean, they can contribute a sizable portion of of nutrients and phosphorus. I mean, they're obviously a natural thing. The difference is they can more easily get into our storm sewers now because we have them on every corner. Whereas before, if they weren't right next to the lake, those leaves are unlikely to end up in the waterway. I don't have a good number as to what percentage of the phosphorus or other nutrients are leaves, but I've heard in some metro areas that fraction can be up to maybe a third of the nutrients entering of a watershed.
I know a lot of cities have leaf pickup programs where the citizens will just rake the leaves out on certain days and the city picks them up, and it's hugely popular. And I'm just wondering if this is something, if we would implement that it would also help significantly with reducing the phosphorus.
I mean, it could. I mean, we do as part of the street sweeping program, I think get something in the neighborhood of 300 truckloads of leaves a year. So there's a fair amount that's collected through public areas already. But that's more for what's in the street and not necessarily what's falling in people's yards.
I mean, I guess I'd be really interested to know what it would take to implement something like that. I know that lots of cities do it, and it's really appreciated by the taxpayers. And I don't know who would look into that, but it'd be Keith. Could you do that for us? Okay. Other questions, Pam?
Yeah. Has anyone signed up for the Adopt a Storm Drain program?
The city does not have a formal sign-up piece. I know there are members of the community who are doing that on their own accord. There is actually an official Adopt a Storm Drain program that is mostly in the Twin Cities metro area, and it's something that we've considered joining. There is an annual cost to it, so we need to look at whether it makes sense to do that or whether have our own kind of sign-up program. But you know, I think that's something that we would want to do in the future.
So what do people do if they get involved? I mean, what do? They just go out and watch the storm?
Principally, it's folks who will get a bucket of leaves in the fall, or potentially get some sand in the winter that just ends up collecting there, and they'll, I believe, take that to the compost sites in town.
Okay, thank you.
Al?
What are you hearing? I mean, I've heard for years and years that cities like Winona with a separate sanitary and a storm system, that we treat the sanitary but not the storm, and there's been, a possibility of treating stormwater. What are you hearing from your sources about that in the future?
What I've heard is that, I mean, certainly any new development today, the stormwater is going to be going to a stormwater pond or some sort of detention basin. So kind of for, I forget what year it is, but for the last 20 years or so, there's been that kind of controlled piece where it's not just down the pipe into the waterway. So there is that control and natural treatment. But treating of what goes into our storm sewer now, I haven't heard of cities taking an initiative to try to essentially put that to a treatment plant.
I guess my point was from regulatory agencies. That was something that has been discussed for years, and the cost would be extremely prohibitive for a city like Winona to do, and that's why I'm kind of making sure that we're not going to be blindsided by a new rule or something like that.
We keep an eye on it. a lot of, there are some areas of the country like, that contribute to the Chesapeake Bay and the Puget Sound. They are doing a lot more pretreatment of storm water before it gets into the system. And I think with varying degrees of success.
Yeah,
But you're right, it is extremely expensive.
just to build a collector system would be,
But they have
Extremely
different things like the inline system with the storm pipe, and they have like a centrifuge that the water goes through, and then they pop the lid off every couple of weeks, and they have to take a vac truck and clean it out.
yeah,
I mean, to that extent.
wow. Okay, thank you, John. Thank you.
Paul, excuse me, Paul?
So, is it illegal to rake leaves and blow lawn clippings into our street currently? Is it illegal, or?
Yes, it is, and that's probably one of the main complaints we get from folks is there people are raking leaves or putting grass clippings in the street. I mean, I can understand if you're going to do that, and as long as you clean it up right away, you know, that's understandable. But certainly, if you're leaving it there, then you might hear from the city.
Thanks.
Anybody else? George?
You may have said it, but what is a MS4 permit?
MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer. So that is a permit that's required by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for having a storm sewer system that discharges to public waters. So Winona, as a member, has an MS4 permit. Pretty much any city our size or even smaller is going to be part of that program, required to be an MS4 city.
Okay. And I agree, Mayor, I heard as well too, you know, in years past about leaf pickups in another city. Be interesting to find out just what that number would be for equipment and personnel. And I know a lot of people, if they know that the street sweeper's coming through tonight, they're raking their lawns at 10 o'clock at night, getting everything out there for them, so.
Okay. Thank you, John. Anybody else wish to speak? State your name and address.
I'm Reggie McLeod. I live on 267 East Sanborn, and I'm a member of Healthy Lake Winona. And originally, Healthy Lake Winona was called Swimmable Lake Winona. We just had a very interesting presentation from Visit Winona, and it's interesting to note that most of the recreation that the residents of Winona enjoy, and that the visitors probably too to Winona enjoy, probably involves either Lake Winona or the river. So our storm sewers have a huge effect on both of those systems. And if we want to invest in tourism, if we want to invest in the health and safety of the residents of Winona, improving the quality of the water that's going into the lake and river would be an important part of that. When I moved to Winona, the lake was fairly clear, and we had a beautiful beach. There was actually a diving platform out there, and a lot of people used it, and a lot of people swam in it. And it's really sad to see the water in that lake degrade over the time that I've been here. And the same, I'm editor of Big River Magazine, and there's a very similar problem in the lake with nutrients, in the river with nutrients. That's creating the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. But it also affects the fishing and the swimming and people using the river as well. There's a lot of things the city could do. We could tighten our regulations a little more in development. One of the important things, I think, is educating people, and some of that might involve some of the city development that we're paying for. For instance, I was a little disappointed in the development on Levy Park. It just looked like more concrete was my first impression, and concrete is kind of a big part of the problem with getting nutrients in the storm sewers. It's better to have the water go into the earth and go into the water table. That way, that keeps the river and the lake a lot cleaner. if you want to see a really good example of taking good care of stormwater, go over to Market Street downtown. There are paving bricks there that were probably installed over 100 years ago, and they're still there. How many times have we rebuilt the streets around there, and how much have we invested in the streets, in the storm sewers? And how much have we invested in Market Street to maintain that and to keep that viable? And another good example would be the block that the city hall is on right here. How much permeable surface is there on this block? It's all concrete and roofs, except for a little bit of lawn by the bank. So there's a lot of things that could be done to improve the water in the lake and the river. And as a city, the storm sewers are, the runoff is what affects those things most of all, probably, for this city. And if we're doing things, I'd like it to be obvious to the public so people will think about it. Think about why there's a rain garden. Think of why there's, come back here. Think about why there's grass. And I think I think it'll help the people that live here. It'll help the visitors. It'll make this more attractive, healthy city to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie. Anybody else wish to speak?
I won't be this long. There's only a couple sentences on each page. Thank you. My name is Helen Davis. I live at 701 Johnson. It happens to be a corner with a storm sewer grate and two big boulevards. So I took a few years ago to just watching what happens with storm grates, and it's all very interesting. But I won't tell you about all that. When I was thinking of what to say tonight, it occurred to me that the first thing I wanted to say is that whatever we allow on our city streets, it comes back to bite us, no matter what. We're going to have to live with it forever and ever and ever, because mainly because it gets washed into our rivers and lakes. As residents, we fertilize our lawns and sidewalks too. Many people in my neighborhoods fertilize their sidewalks. Hard as that is to believe.
You said fertilize their sidewalks?
Well, yeah, because it's shorter. They can just make a couple passes. They don't have to do, the boulevard gets in the way and that's really short, you know. So they just run it all over and you just walk all over in it in the summer in my neighborhood. Okay, so we fertilize it. It washes into the lakes. It results in algae bloom and all that silty, all that other things. Too many nutrients in the lake. We rake our leaves into the streets. The city tries to come along and pick them up. In the winter, the city salts the streets, it sands the streets, and there's a lot of gravel in that sand. And it plows the streets all winter. And in the spring, we residents, many of who have raked our leaves into the street all summer and fall, to the city's despair, I am sure, but in the spring, when it all melts, our boulevards have, I've measured 2 to 3 inches of gravel and salt and asphalt, some as big as my hand, pieces off of the street. I live on a street that's not very well maintained, corner of Mill Street in Johnson. And every time that plow comes by in the winter, wonk, and it all goes up on the boulevards. So for a few years, many of us tried packing it in tiny little boxes and then hobbling to our garbage things, but the garbage men won't take this away. It's very, very heavy stuff. And I want to tell you what I ended up doing just because I got so mad about it, and my back got worse and worse over the years, is I rake it all back into the streets and I shove it into the middle, because in the spring and summer and fall, the city brushes the streets and they pick it up. It goes into machines and then they can dump it. And I think this is not even a good way to deal with this problem, but that's what I do because I do clean the grates and get rid of all that myself. So it seems like there's just a love-hate relationship going on between city residents and the city street department, and nobody's to blame for this, really, we're all responsible. My plea tonight is that we work together to figure something out. The city street department is one of the hardest working departments I've ever seen. They're out there all night. When I stop and talk to them, which I do often in the summer, it's always very interesting learning how long they've worked and what neighborhoods they've been in and how long, and how little machinery they have. I can't imagine a worse job than trying to coordinate that department. I really can't. You have the weather as a variable that you can't ever count on. So there's a lot of grumbling on the resident side of this equation. I never hear any from the street people because they aren't going to complain to me, and I'm sure they don't have time to do that. But I think that we can work together better. I think that there's a way that if we just could sit down and figure out the problems, that we could maybe not solve the problems all at once, but we could certainly get a better method. It'd be really nice to get some part of this right. And I think we can do that by supporting one another in each of our jobs here. I don't have any solutions. What I would really like to ask for is a conversation, ways that residents could be. Right now, there's a lot of blaming. Residents rake all their leaves in the streets, and we blame the city street department for all kinds of things. And I'd like to see that stop. And as fun as it is sometimes to do that, it is, get out with neighbors and complain about things like that. I think that we can do better than that, and I'd like to see us do it because really, the other thing that occurred to me was that city streets are gateways to pollution. Whatever we put on them, they aren't in and of themselves, but whatever we put on city streets is a gateway to possible pollution, and we're really good at that. So, I don't know, I don't have the answers. I think we need to talk about it. I don't feel like there's much sense in me calling the street department or talking to the director, simply because they're busy and individual complaints aren't, that's not the way to do things. But I think that if we could just identify some problems, figure out possible solutions, I can't imagine it's rocket science. We all do that separately on our own little plots of land. But if we got some wholesale kind of solutions to this for city residents anyway, and could be more helpful to the city street department, it would be a good idea. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for your comments. Mm-hmm. Anybody else wish to speak?
Neil Mundell, 68 Forest Oaks Court. Like Reggie and Helen, I'm a member of Healthy Lake Winona, a citizens action group in the city. I too am concerned about the Lake Winona and the storm sewers that enter into it. I know the city has done a great job of controlling a lot of eroded soils that come off the Windcrest area through Woodlawn Cemetery by building retention basins, and that has helped immensely on the Western Basin, limiting some of the input into that system. However, I still see a lot of change that's happened in Lake Winona over the last 30 years since I moved here. The quality of the lake has changed dramatically, in certain cases for the good. The dredging that happened now 20 years ago has dramatically turned around the East Basin in terms of the fisheries, and the fisheries are now the best that they've been in the last 50 years in that lake. I can't say the same thing about the West Basin because that didn't get the same treatment at all. And so I would encourage the city to be more innovative in their thinking in terms of trying to look at ways that they can manage discharges that are coming into the lake from the storm sewers. I worked with the city staff about 25 plus years ago on the dredging of Lake Winona. We developed a lot of good plans. We had some good efforts put together to do that. And we thought it was kind of crazy that we could raise that much money and get that much done. But it's been a good effort. And prior to that, we also came up with some other crazy ideas. One of those was actually to build a storm sewer interceptor line along the entire north shore of Lake Winona, taking all the storm sewers that drain from the city and diverting them to the ditch that's on the east side of Mankato Avenue. At the time, they estimated that was $10 to $12 million. I'd hate to think what that cost today. But that was a dramatic idea. That was one of the alternatives that was laid out at the time. And so that's the kind of thinking, not necessarily that approach, but that's the kind of thinking I'd like to see the city undertake now. What are some solutions to trying to control Lake Winona, control the inputs that are being brought into there? Because at the time when we dredged Lake Winona, we estimated it gave the lake another 50 years of life. That's already 20 years ago. And again, the West Basin got none of that treatment. So its time is coming. I teach limnology at Winona State, and I talk about lake succession. I see in the West Basin lake succession happening very quickly, filling in, changing dramatically. I did some surveys last year on the common carp population, and according to some numbers that the University of Minnesota researchers find, the common carp have now reached a size or a number in that lake where it's basically a tipping point. Things are going to change fast now with the numbers that we have there. And so a lot of things kind of roll into the same ball of wax here. Everything is tied together, and anything that the city can do to think about improving the quality of Lake Winona will not only benefit the health of that lake, but I think also our community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? One last chance. Anybody else wish to speak? Hearing none. Close the public hearing, and we'll move on.
And the next item under the petitions, requests, and communications, item 3.1 is the extension of the Wesley United Methodist Church parking lot lease.
Move to approve the parking lot lease.
Motion by George, seconded by Paul. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.2 is the Kashubian Capital Centennial 2020 events.
I would move for approval of that event.
Well, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, I'd second that.
Okay. Motion by George, seconded by Pam. Discussion? Mr. Breeza, did you want to say anything? Sure. Briefly?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Tim Breeza, 2 Washington Street, 201, a neighbor. Once every 100 years or so, we get an opportunity to celebrate our heritage, our Polish Kashubian heritage. And in 2020, that particular opportunity is upon us. And we have devised quite a lengthy year-long celebration with over 30, or about 35 events that we will talk about, items that are prevalent in the Polish heritage. And with Michelle Alexander, who is our lead on this celebration, along with staff members. Lee back there is a member. We are going to revitalize things that are passing away with our 3rd and 4th generation Polish people. You know, after that length of time, some of those things that you remember your grandparents and parents and others seem to dim in that fog of memory. But this coming year, we're going to talk about a lot of individual things, from arts and crafts that the Polish have. We're going to bring in artisans from Poland. We're going to bring in teachers from Poland. We're going to bring experts. We're going to bring experts to teach us how to cook good old Polish food from a culinary institute over in Poland. Everybody likes that. But suffice it to say that there's going to be a lot of publicity upon some of the items that we're going to do. And I just want to forewarn people that, you know, there's a lot of teaching opportunities that are going to be out here, opportunities to share our heritage, but in some of these workshops, they're going to be quite limited. The cost is very minimal, if there's any cost at all. And everybody that has an interest in this, and there are many, please go to our website, and if you have that interest, sign up now, because those spots will fill up very quickly, and as they do, your participation is somewhat limited. It will be up to the media and for us to help share that with you out there in Winona and elsewhere. And I might make the point that this is no small endeavor. This is an international effort, literally. We are going to be bringing people from all over the United States, Canada, and Poland to Winona to go back and share this celebration. So it will be a big deal. We have a number of dignitaries that will be coming in various different times of the year to help celebrate this. And I think you'll be surprised. I think you'll be impressed. I think that you'll be very happy to say that, you know, those Polacks in Winona, they're a pretty good bunch of people. And you're going to see that we're going to show our colors and show you what we can do. I appreciate the support that the city has given to helping us in this endeavor. There are a number of other major sponsors that we have out there, but you said this is a short time that I have. I won't press my time right now tonight, but I will be back at other times to tell you more specifically about what we have going on, and I want you to share in our heritage as much as we enjoy it. So I thank you for your time tonight. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thank you. And you didn't mention the contingent from Winona that's going to Poland.
No, and we have quite the leader that's going to be taking us over there. In May, our honor is going to lead that delegation, and we're going to go over and celebrate the Polish Constitution in May. And there are a number of people. We have George, and we have Michelle, we have Lee over here, we have Stephen, you're going along with, you're just going to be backing up the mayor. I will be there, but we're going to be well represented when we go over. So here's the other little point about that. We're going to have newspapers over there exchanging articles back and forth with what we have, so that there won't be any shenanigans over there. You'll be able to see what we do. So Mayor, on your best terms, you know.
Now he's not going to go. The press conference on.
Yes, and thank you for that, Lee. On January 6th, we're going to have our kickoff celebration right here at noon, City Hall. We're going to be announcing formally our intentions, and there's going to be some great visual aids that we're going to have in the building. I'll leave that as a surprise for you, and hope that everybody would be here. You're all invited.
Well, thank you very much. It sounds like an exciting year. Did we vote?
There's a motion.
Okay, I didn't think we voted. Any further discussion, comments? Michelle?
Oh, no, I think it's better if I let
Okay.
the other side do it.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 3.3 is the Prairie Island Campground Front Porch Management Report.
Introduce yourselves.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Jamie Schell.
Mayor, Council, I'm Ann Conway.
We are Front Porch Management. Here we are, the end of our second year. Feels like time has flown. Just real quick, up to the right there on that photo is our new kind of the logo at Prairie Island Campground, or an image that we have on shirts and all kinds of things. So it's been well received and kind of fun, encompasses kind of everything. I'm going to try to keep this much more brief than the last year, which I think we counted to 38 minutes. So we'll go faster than that tonight. Thank you for your support again this year, and a year that we all know was somewhat trying. Mother Nature challenged us. We'll just go right into the sales. The $252,480 came in probably better than I thought it might the way the year went, but yet it was still significantly down from last year. I believe from the numbers I had, that's still the third best year reported for Prairie Island, which I guess is pretty good in a year where we had an unprecedented flood. And again, just some of the numbers down the line to give you a little bit of idea where some of those dollars come from: short-term stays, seasonal stays, and then of course the city allocation, the funds that went to the general fund. Just a little map of what the season looked like. 169 days. Last year was 197, but that probably an asterisk by the 169 and the fact that that's when we first finally got some campers in there. The entire campground was not open till the July 4th weekend, and even some of those sites probably should not have been open. They were still wet and had issues. But it was mid-June before we kind of felt like we were rolling. So you see, we kind of took a hit in the occupancy. Last year was close to 50% total occupancy in the campground. Some good numbers here for us still. Unique visitors. Those are uniques. Been there one time. Or a new IP address looking at our website. So that was still up 13.5%. Page views is up. We definitely gained quite a few Facebook followers in the last year. And a lot of those events that we have there help with a lot of those things. But a real fun one was the Goethe Foundation was that free beer and pretzels event that fell in our lap basically through a partnership with Art of the Rural. It's not every day someone calls you and said, "Are you interested in free beer and pretzels? And how many kegs do you want? And how many pretzels do you want?" And they just showed up, and it was a really fun day. We had music, and just people in the community showed up and ate pretzels and drank beer, and it was a really nice community building event. So rentals, we had some other types of equipment this year that helped a little bit with that. We were down a little bit. Of the river, of course, was not that friendly for canoeing and kayaking this year, but we still got into it later in the season. Just some new things, the things that we're trying to continue to do. Again, we had quite a bit less time to do projects than we wanted this year, but a new swing set, which we finally got in the fall. The boat launch. We finally tore the boat launch out just because it was in such bad shape. But we do have all the parts and components sitting there, so hopefully, and then the river promptly went back up in the fall, so we were unable to get them put in, but we will, hopefully, we'll just have a normal spring, and we'll get that in. But our community garden, we finally got this wonderful sign. It's in 3 different languages. There's Hmong, Spanish, and English, explaining the purpose and what we do with that garden, and that's a really important part of the transformation that out there is that garden. People come in, and it's just such an amazing space that welcomes people in. It's really been one of Ann's, definitely she was the brains behind that whole idea there, so that's been really successful. And then HBC Community Wi-Fi, and we'll talk a little bit, but basically, entire Prairie Island Campground is now Wi-Fi accessible based on this partnership with HBCI, which really helps. And even over to the dog park, I think they're able to get that going. Kiwanis Shelter and a number of other things that we did through that. So that makes a number of people quite happy. That's just an example of what we were dealing with and why that boat launch needed to be taken out. It was long past its expiration date. So we had a couple different partnerships, with the state, of course, that SHIP grant, which helped expand our garden, which there's a whole new addition. We'll see you can see where the kids are working there on that hill. That was a completely overrun, overgrown piece of land that had tons of invasives. And we had a National Civilian Community Corps group there for a month this year in partnership with the Winona Family YMCA. And They stayed at the campground. They camped there for a month. Some of these people had never camped in their life. And we had like 3 thunderstorms the first week. And they all were left there a lot stronger and happy, but it was definitely interesting to begin. But they literally attacked that hill with their bare hands and shovels and picks and tore out trees and stumps that had been there for, I don't know how many years, probably, Chinese elm had been there for 30 years. But anyway, that was torn apart. That is going to be planted with pollinator plants, different prairie species, dryland prairie species. It's also going to have garden expansions in it, so there's going to be squash and different plants growing out of that. So yeah, it's a really cool expansion. But that was the crew on the left that they worked their butts off. And again, just the diversity. But this is a quote that we wrote, or this is something Ann wrote in the grant to SHIP, and I think it was a really strong piece of that grant and why we got additional funding for that. So. So just some more things that started to happen. Some funds that council approved for us last year are kind of helping us do some of these things on this list. The plan for the riverfront, with an excavator so busy this fall, we were unable to get some of this initiated, but we still have plans for redoing a whole bunch of stuff in the primitive side of the campground along the river that is going to help with a ton of runoff issues. Some of the stuff we're talking about this evening earlier. With runoff, there's some erosion issues that we really need to resolve on that property, and this is kind of a first phase towards it. And of course, the ash trees, there were 144 more came out this year. All those stumps were ground out. All the ground was reworked, raked, seeded, all of that. So that was a lot of hard work between the city, between some contractors, between Front Porch Management. And then John worked and got that DNR grant. We got another 130 trees that we got planted back in the ground this year at Prairie Island Campground. The NCC group, other community volunteers all helped water those things. And hopefully we'll have a success rate of keeping a bunch of those alive. Put in a new electrical service. That's part of also making that Wi-Fi possible. It's also expanding some other things that we would like to do, and also a couple sites now that have electric that didn't before. They don't have water, but they have electric, which everybody wants their cell phone charged, I guess. And then we put in the whole new boulder fence, which we've gotten a lot of feedback. If you go to the spillway, there's, rather than the old wooden posts and cable fence, now we have boulders in place of that, and it just has a better aesthetic. They don't get wrecked in the flood. If somebody decides they want to run their car into it, I guess that's their fault or their problem. It isn't our broken fence anymore, so that's good. So all just really nice there are things, this year's been kind of a blur, but when you look back at a list, you're like, I guess we did get a lot of stuff done. So this is an example of what's happening at our beach, and in a year like this where we had multiple 3-inch plus rains, this happened probably 7-8 times this year. And that's us back down there with, the labor that we pay for to rake that sand, pull it up, try to do things, because the beach is a very popular part of the campground. It's what main things people want to do. So there's some of that excavating work is hopefully going to help resolve a bunch of this problem out there. And then activities, again, community building, education and ecology, personal health. We started yoga out there. We're doing some other partnerships with doing some eco-learning, which is some really cool stuff. And again, always a lot of arts. Happy Dancing Turtle was a blast this year. Such a great organization to work with, to take the kids out there scooping bugs. And Manitou does Kung Fu for kids, and they do all this really fun programming. So. And of course, Winona State, again, has always been a great partner for recreating. Just some photos of things going on. That one on the top is our boat concert that we do, Play to the Beach. So people are on the beach, that's a blast. And then more of our campfire concert series. Just the stage at night, and then just some cool fall harvest out of the garden. And yeah, I feel really good about this. I was digging through Google reviews, and these were a couple testimonials, and that top one really, I guess, was a little affirmation that I think we're doing some things right, at least for Nancy, for sure. And I guess Jeremy, he seems pretty happy, and it was definitely, could feel the community building things that we're trying to do, so. Opportunities for growth. You know, I really have been thinking about this a lot more, and especially in a year of flood where we dealt with this high water. Facilities are really important to people when they come. They want to be welcomed with something really, you know, that's inviting. And with the activities we're doing around that garden, we're doing the best we can with what we have, but I really feel that, you know, a welcome center, a new building there is just such an integral piece to the success of this place. And the other is docks. People really miss the docks. That just something about that feeling of standing on a dock out into the water is just something we hear constantly from people. And we got a couple docks last year, but there's more that could be definitely added. But I'll talk a little more about the Welcome Center here shortly. But programming, hosting events just like we're doing, you know, recreation opportunities that you've all been working hard on and talking about, staff have been in town, are just really important to our camping, to our campground, that hopefully those happen. This is the building we're currently have our offices out of, and that one on the left, that's the second crest of the year, which was even the lower of the two. So yeah, it's a matter of just you got a building that's, you know, you just never know. It's really hard to do anything in there, much more than it is. It was an old pavilion that got closed in, you know, but it's definitely, I think it's served its purpose, but it's long past its expiration date. This is not even flooding, this is a rain event, and we have to throw a towel in front of the door because of the runoff runs right into the building, and to keep it from running inside. So just some of those things that building makes it really challenging. You know, a Prairie Island Welcome Center, our Welcome Center would be with new heated and cooled shower space. That's the hardest thing. Springs are cold, falls are cold. Summer is so hot that the showers are like a swamp. You're battling mold growth, things like that when you get a week or two run. There's just no climate control in them. That makes it really hard. But then we could do great things like gift shops, an interpretive center. You know, we are right in a sanctuary and a refuge space out there. There's just tons of opportunity to that. A small commercial kitchen. We would love to serve Nate and Allie's, but we can't without a commercial kitchen. We could have soft serve machines, things like that people would really love. And then just a building with a main floor above floodplain. Bottom floor could be operations. I mean, it's just, yeah, it would be a really, really nice thing to have. And again, docks. Things we have to do, new picnic tables, new fire rings. We've got 30 tables that need to be retired today before somebody gets hurt. We've got another 20, 30 beyond that are not far away. Just things that got into, I guess, a pattern of not having a system of replacing so many a year, and that we need to get that going. And the others are just nice developments around there. A development of an ADA campsite would be really cool. Something that somebody in a wheelchair could use, get around a fire, have access to the new ADA privies that we have. So we have some thoughts and ideas for moving forward with that. And those are things I think we could do pretty easily without council action. It's just things I think are important. Yep. Things to get done. And then again, just to wrap it up here just a little bit so you have an idea, this is the running history of funds that have revenue that have gone to the city from Prairie Island Campground in the last 25 years about. You could see the shower repayment from that came out of that, but then in the last 7 years, almost 1.2 million has come back to the city. I don't have a good accounting of costs and expense. I know the city spent quite a bit of money back into Prairie Island, but I think we could do more. And that's the end, but just as an explanation here, this is Klutz the Crow. He adopted us this year. He stayed with us for 2 months, and He literally adopted us. He came up to Danny, who works there out in the campground, cawed at him. Danny said, you know, what are you doing? And he jumped on his golf cart and came back to the store with us and spent 2 months with us. Tons of people had pictures with him on their shoulders. I'd be on my bike and he'd be on top of my head riding around. So that was his proudest day when he flew to the top of the tree, because he couldn't fly when he came to us very well. And then shortly after that, he tacked a fire and burnt his wings and couldn't fly again. So that was the highest we ever saw him fly. But and then he just disappeared. But one day, but Klutz was a great hit this summer. So, all right. Well, thank you, Council.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Doing a good job out there. I like the community atmosphere. I agree with the one comment. I think it's great.
Good work.
Thank you for the support.
Now, the gardens and the native plants is a wonderful thing to do, educating people about that. Great, good deal.
All right, thank you.
And under new business, item 5.1 is the 2020 final tax levy and budget, and there are 2 resolutions.
Well, I would make a motion to adopt the final 2020 property tax levy and the 2020 final budget with the attachments included.
I'd second that.
Motion by Michelle and seconded by Pam. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.2 are the resolutions for the government accounting standards.
I would move to approve the governmental accounting standards.
Second.
Motion by George, seconded by Michelle. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.3 is the agreement with Borkowski Towing for the inspections department.
I would move to approve that agreement.
Second.
Motion by George, seconded by Eileen. Discussion? George?
Yes, thank you. Just for clarification, Borkowski has the towing. I am Borzakowski. I am not from the towing company. Thank you.
All right, glad we got that straight. Any other, Paul?
So this says junk vehicle ordinance. So if there is been a vehicle in a drive or in a yard which, like unattended or not used, or what's the definition of a junk vehicle?
They don't have updated,
Plates.
they have to have the updated plate. So you could have a brand-new car, and if they didn't get their tags updated, technically it's a junk vehicle, technically.
There's other parts of the statute, Lucy can run through them, but
Right,
it has to be operable as well.
but the main piece is that if it's not currently a licensed vehicle and it's in a yard, it's considered kind of an abandoned vehicle. We did have about 19 vehicles that we did nuisance enforcement on in the past year. We actually only towed 1, so we're getting really great compliance with this new junk vehicle ordinance.
What if a vehicle that's about to be repaired supposedly is on a trailer on a piece of property?
I'd have to take a closer look at that. I don't know off the top of my head. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Mayor?
George?
Lucy, then if my vehicle is unlicensed or not current licensed, and if I get a current tag on it, then that vehicle can stay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, Lucy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.4 is the agreement with Borkowski Towing for the police department.
So move.
Second.
Motion by George, seconded by Eileen. Any comments? Any clarifications?
Same clarification. Thank you.
All right, we're ready to vote, I think. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.5 is the designation of the official newspaper for 2020.
I would move to approve that the Winona Daily News be the official newspaper.
I'll second it.
Motion by George and seconded by Al. Discussion?
I would like to suggest that the city take a look at how this is managed. These newspapers are, this price is extremely low, and I know that newspapers are having a hard time all over the place. People are looking at the web more. I think that we might consider publishing our own, if it's possible, I don't know, if under the state law or under our charter, publishing our own notices, our own legal notices on our own website and saving the money. So I'd just like to see this, we can't do that.
That would be a charter change.
We'd have to change the charter.
Oh, state
It is
law.
state law?
State
Okay.
law hasn't caught up with the internet, if I understand correctly. I mean, not really.
Right.
Because we
Okay.
talked about this a few years ago, if I remember, when the prices were much higher.
Okay, that was very efficient. I got that looked into right away.
Any other comments? We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
6-1.
Item 5.6 is a resolution for supportive trail funding.
Move to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Paul and seconded by George.
We just get a little primer on this? Thanks.
Mayor and Council, the City Parks Rec Department works with the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails. And one of their advocacy efforts is to advocate for $4 million in additional bonding money through the state legislature each year. And this particular request, we're asking for local support for that advocacy effort. In this case, it's important to note that this funding is supplementary to the legacy funding, and it's supplemental to our application to the GMR TPC, which is typically our legacy funding for the Bluffs Traverse. So this is additional funding. And the idea behind this funding is that there certainly could be trail projects or other outdoor recreational opportunities that don't fall within that legacy category, or where communities maybe have not reached their regional designation, which was required for our legacy application. And this money then helps support those projects. And so this is certainly something, obviously, that staff has brought forward and recommends, because we certainly have the potential to apply for these grants, primarily for what I would call smaller projects that don't maybe reach the level of legacy dollars. But that could be, as I mentioned, supplemental. So for just a quick example, if there would be something with a connection to the Bluff Traverse, or as we talked recently about the Flyway Trail, if there were other components of the city that might connect to the Flyway that might not rise to the level of the legacy funding, this would be an opportunity of a grant that we could seek. So again, just to reiterate, it's important funding outside of the legacy dollars that the state has established.
Okay. Eileen?
Just want to clarify for anyone who has a question that this is something we are saying we support. We are not spending money.
Mayor and Council, you are simply raising your voice to offer support for this funding. You are not spending or allocating any dollars.
All right, that's clear. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.7 is the Masonic Temple Mechanical Upgrade Engineering and Architectural Services Proposal.
Make a motion to approve the attached
Second.
resolution.
Motion by Michelle and seconded by Paul. Discussion? Chad?
Mayor and Council, thanks for the motion. And second, certainly there's been a lot of discussion about upgrading the HVAC at the Masonic Temple. Certainly appreciate your support with the motion. And second, however, if we could do an amendment to that motion, what we would ultimately like to have here is that the council make a motion to approve the scope of services that was attached within your packet, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute our standard consultant services contract with Miller Dunwoody.
So moved.
I'll second that amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? Al?
I don't have any discussion on the amendment, no. I'll do it with the main motion.
Okay. We'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment passes. Okay, now the general
Yeah,
motion.
they have a fee proposal of a maximum of $138,366 in their proposal. And just refresh my memory, maybe others on council, about where those funds are coming from.
Mayor and council, the initial $138,366 would need to come from reserve funds, and likely we would pull that from the facility fund.
Okay.
The resolution that we also need a motion on then signifies that the council plans, or the city intends to borrow money for the total project, which is estimated, roughly around 1.8 million. This is what this will help to find that amount. And that this 138,366 is then reimbursable, meaning that when you borrow the money for the total project, we then reimburse the facility fund for these design services.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We've talked about this a lot, and it seems like something that we've been all wanting to do for a while. Michelle?
It was nice to go there tonight and see the possibilities beyond stage use, and I can see that by doing this, we open up a lot of possibilities for the building's use. And it's a long time coming. Yep, year-round. It's a long time coming.
Paul?
I would second Councilmember Alexander's comments on the options for use for the facility. I do have a question about, and I'm trying to think of the name of the type of loans now. It's escaping me. Are there any energy efficiency, low-interest loans or of the like that we can apply for or use on this HVAC upgrade?
Mayor and council, in our proposal for Miller Dunwoody, they did not address that. We did ask them about any mechanical rebates, if there could be any Excel, the name is escaping me as well, rebates. And we will ask Miller Dunwoody to help assist with us in looking at all those possibilities to see if we can get rebates or any, savings for efficiency.
Thanks.
Any other comments? All right, we'll vote on the main motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.8 is the guided climbing agreement.
I would move to
I
authorize.
thought they, I thought that
Chad, I think, wants us,
motion was for both resolutions.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Here's one.
it
We
was.
wanted to clarify that.
Okay,
oh,
yes. sorry.
yes.
So, guided climbing agreement.
I motion to authorize administration to execute the agreement.
And second that?
Okay, motion by George, seconded by Paul. Discussion? Chad?
Mayor and council, I do want to make one note within the agreement that I think is important for you to know, and important for our department to reiterate. We did amend the insurance requirements for this agreement, so what you have before you is correct. And I want to give you a little background on that so that you're aware of what we did in this situation in particular. There is a new state statute that allows the statutory limits to decrease if the activity is an outdoor recreational activity and, which is important, if the entity that we're doing an agreement with is a nonprofit. So in this case, we meet one of those qualifiers. Obviously, this is for an outdoor recreational activity. Second qualifier was not met because Big River Climbing Guides is an LLC. We did, staff then had discussion with the League of Minnesota Cities about the limits for this insurance. League of Minnesota Cities has insured the city that they will defend us if there is any claim to meet the, in this case, what would be a shortfall in the per occurrence and aggregate. So meaning that the League of Minnesota Cities then would step in and defend the city. And that was important for us to note, again, because we meet one of the two clauses with a new state statute. So this is one of the first agreements that we brought forward with the new insurance requirements. Again, city attorneys reviewed. We've reviewed with the League of Minnesota Cities, but I needed to make sure that you were aware because that is different in this agreement.
Chad, I'm just a little confused, or maybe clarify for me. If somebody wants to do the climbing, this doesn't prevent them from an individual going up there and climbing?
It does not.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So is
Paul?
that language from the league in this contract?
That language is not in this agreement from the league, but we will have that in writing from the league that they are willing to defend us. Yes.
Anything else? Let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
And on to item 5.9 is the plat review for the Jacobs second plat.
Make a motion to approve the attached resolution and accept the 3 attachments.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, and seconded by Eileen. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 5.10 is the Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 261 2020 MOU with the Winona Police Department Sergeants.
Make a motion to approve the attached resolutions.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by George. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 7.1 is council concerns.
Let's start with Pam.
I have nothing tonight, but I wish everyone a great holiday, and since I just got a new snow blower, I want lots of snow.
I just got one too, and I'm perfectly fine with this thing sitting there all winter in my garage. Paul?
Thank you. I'll echo Councilmember Iden's well wishes for a happy holiday for everyone coming forward. I also want to remind everybody that the December Pedal for the People will be coming up this Saturday. The charity is that we're pedaling for this coming Saturday is Maplewood Townhomes bicycling program. And we'll be finishing a ride at Jaja's, if you're interested.
Okay.
And if it's too cold for your ride, meet us at Jaja's anyway.
Can we pedal in our home on like a bike? Would that count?
Any
Yeah.
pedaling, anything you want to do.
Okay, just checking.
George?
Interesting. Merry Christmas to everyone, and happy, healthy, and prosperous New Year to everyone. Thank you.
All right, Michelle?
Just Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I can't believe we're down another year. It's unbelievable. I don't know where it goes.
Eileen?
Just happy holidays to everyone. See you next year.
And Al?
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, joyous Kwanzaa, and Happy Holidays.
Thank you. Covered all bases.
Tried to. There's
Under
probably
the
a few I missed.
under the consent agenda, there are 7 items. Approval of the minutes from December 2nd, the final adoption of an ordinance to vacate the alley on the Central School Block, an ordinance to establish 45-minute parking on Mark, Howard, and King Streets, and 4 claims against the city, one by Christopher Williams, Melinda Dvorak, Amy Ash, and Peter Bagshaw.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Al. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to...
Recess.
No,
No,
we're
okay.
adjourning.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
adjourning and going into closed session.
Oh.
Well, I still second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn for the year. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?